Hi and welcome. Today we take a look at some of the new features introduced by patch 2.8 in DCS, namely the AGC trace and the jamming effects. As usual, this is not a very in-depth discussion, rather a practical overview. A much more detailed study is available on the website. The only ECM barely simulated in DCS is a noise jammer. It aims to deny the range, but allows the F-14 to track the angles. The elevation can be quickly assessed as well, either from the DDD panel or the TID, but remember that in the latter case you need to integrate the displayed value. When a jamming target is locked, the tracking switches to jamming angle tracking, single target tracking, or simply JAT-ST. The vertical line is displayed at the bottom of the DDD and is called the JET. In DCS, the threshold value is automated, and the RIO cannot adjust it. Let's have a look at the first scenario. The setup is very simple: two aircraft, both Tomcats, one of which is jamming at a range of circa 150 nautical miles. The first new feature we can see is the new AGC trace, or automatic gain control trace. In simple terms, the trace shows the strength of the return signal. Sometimes the returns are not strong enough to have a brick displayed on the radar, but these partial returns, so to speak, are shown on the DDD. Something similar to an oscilloscope. Note how the two traces appear on the DDD. Even at such ranges, jamming is visible, but even more interestingly, the partial returns of the non-jamming Tomcats are displayed, albeit barely. Therefore, a good RIO can now detect possible targets at incredibly long ranges. If you're familiar with the rationale of range assessment in pulse Doppler search, we can now expand it and include another block. This means that, for example, the range of a fighter-sized contact can be assessed by considering whether it appears only as a trace, and in this case, the distance may be greater than 110 nautical miles. If it appears in a pulse Doppler search, then the range may be between 80 nautical miles and 110 nautical miles. If the range is closer than that, then the RIO has all the tools to assess the range accurately, because the target is displayed on the TID. Back to jamming, range plays a fundamental role in defeating jammers in DCS. The topic has been discussed in depth on Flying Wire, but the core of the matter is that the range is the only way to defeat jammers in DCS. The distance at which a radar pierces through an ECM is called burn-through range. As you can imagine, determining the range becomes almost a minigame for the radar intercept officer, but it is fundamental to enable the offensive capabilities of the Tomcat. Jamming effects and AGC trace allow the RIO to maintain situational awareness even in complex situations and through the usual Doppler limitations. In this scenario, two aircraft, one of which is jamming, move in and out from the main lobe clutter filter and the zero Doppler filter, and these familiar situations are easily recognizable on the DDD. As you can see, the right ATA contact is about to enter the upper boundary of the MLC filtered area. It will then reappear from the lower boundary and enter the zero Doppler filtered area, and the AGC trace is visible throughout. At the same time, the jamming target is now moving within the burn-through range, and the returns is visible on displays. The most interesting aspect is that the brick of the jamming target is now visible through the filters, whilst the non-jamming contact is disappearing. This means that we can track, lock and engage a jamming target almost without limitations. The last scenario sees a jamming contact hot. Since the distance is greater than the burn-through range, we can only angle track the return, entering in JAT-ST mode. In this case, I locked it directly from the JET in the AGC trace. The question now is how we can assess the range, and there are several ways to do it, and the following are three examples. The first is the familiar link for a data link. AWACSs in fact are mostly immune to the type of jamming depicted in DCS. We can therefore receive target information, hook it from the TID as the RIO would do in any other scenario. The second method uses the television camera set, or TCS. The camera is incredibly powerful, but in DCS its range is limited to 42 nautical miles. This issue prevents the RIO from assessing the range over longer distances, but On the other hand, we can use it as a sort of threshold to determine whether the range is further than 42 nautical miles or closer. The third method uses Link4C, fighter-to-fighter data link. This mode allows 2 or more Tomcats to triangulate the angles, something similar to what is done to determine the aircraft position using the nav aids. When the target is within board-through range, we can lock it in PD-STT or TrackWise-Scan. Pulse-STT is a bit trickier, since the jump reduces plenty of noise, and the DDD impulse mode is range versus azimuth. However, by adjusting video gain and the erase knobs, and using the super search mode, we can identify the target, marked by a persistent return, which is also slightly larger than the noise. Okay, this is all for this video. I hope you have found it interesting. What has been discussed today will be used in the next video, where we will happily throw M54s at jamming targets at 50 nautical miles. Again, thanks for watching.